Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at UnEpic. And this is an indie game out of all of the ones I've played that I think the title is probably the most fitting. UnEpic is exactly and perfectly represented by its title because it is nothing close to epic. As an NES wannabe dungeoneering platforming RPG with underwhelming writing and consistent tutorial pop-ups, it could be considered a decent game, but it's definitely underwhelming. The overall premise and story of the game is that you start off as an underwhelmingly average character who's having a basement D&D session with his friends, and as he goes to the bathroom to relieve himself, the lights go out and he wakes up in this dungeon castle. Quickly possessed by a nameless dark spirit, he's pretty much forced to wander this castle, eventually confronting the castle's owner as he tries to find a way to relieve himself of this malevolent spirit that is constantly trying to get him killed. As this spirit's only way to escape the botched possession of our protagonist is to get him killed, our hero tries to avoid traps, conquer boss battles, and pretty much figure out why he must have been brought to this castle in the first place. As you make your way toward the end of the game, the grind through this overly developed castle can be exciting if you're really into those type of platformers, but it definitely is one that will have you reminiscing of those days that you used to sketch out maps on a notepad. Information and minor details about what is in a room or what rooms have access to is not displayed on the map, so a constant back and forth between save points and rooms where keys might be necessary is pretty much par for the course. As you progress through the game, though, you will find random gates that lead to a gate room. This gate room is pretty much your ability to warp around the castle, moving from save points to the newest advanced place you've been. And as there is only one save point in the form of an imprisoned spirit in one of the original rooms, saving and healing can be a bit of a bear, especially if you manage to die right after beating a boss. Because as this game is as much RPG as it is platformer, it doesn't matter how many plot points you've uncovered, if you die you will be starting over from the previous save. One of the largest game mechanics in UnEpic is definitely the character customization. This doesn't merely allow you to customize armor and abilities, but this customization of armor and abilities will be implicitly necessary, as certain enemies are much more susceptible to certain weapon damage types, and armors don't just scale up across the board, they only benefit in certain ways. Consistently upgrading and outfitting your character with new armor and new weapons will be the only way to really progress through the game. But as you progress through the game, you'll start to realize that the enemy portfolio and damage systems are incredibly biased towards magic. This unbalanced enemy dynamic isn't only limited to mobs, but also extends to bosses, meaning that if you aren't a magic user, in some cases you may not be able to progress past a boss, or at least without an extreme amount of difficulty. The controls in the game are very simple. They're exactly what you would expect from any platformer: up, down, left, right, jump, and attack. However, unlike a good platformer, the jump function is not exactly as good as it could be. Your character is very limited in its moving while jumping, and there's this odd pause at the top of the jump arc before you're actually able to move in a direction. So what could be really solid platforming elements in the game come across as a little bit less than fulfilling. And while this particular element can be seen as a big drawback, especially for the platforming element, the dialogue of the game and as the story unfolds is actually pretty entertaining. However, the extreme breadth of television and video game references thrown throughout all of the game's dialogue start to hint a bit at nostalgia grabbing. And while I will admit that several of them did make me chuckle to myself a little bit, when references like that are in every single line of dialogue, they start to wear the comedy a bit thin. And in addition to the dialogue in the game unfolding the story as you play through, all of the dialogue is actually fully voiced over. And while this does speak volumes about the amount of care that the developer actually put into the game, I would highly suggest muting it. Though that is just my opinion, so take it or leave it. Overall, UnEpic is, as I said before, a bit of a NES Classic style game with a huge emphasis on platforming and a bit of a forced RPG dynamic. And this becomes most clear by the consistent forced voiceover dialogue that is constantly there to remind you that yes, there is an overarching story. However, if you actually do make it to the end of the game, this is where you'll really understand that the title is quite true. While there are multiple endings which would normally give a game a lot of replay value, I'd have to say that not many of them, if any of them, are actually worth experiencing. And if you're wondering why I said that, feel free to direct message me or leave a comment below and I'll get back to you with exactly what I'm talking about. Overall, UnEpic is actually a decent platformer game, and there are a lot of ways to customize the gameplay to make it more enjoyable. And it has so many elements, such as the engrossing depth of the character development and level up system, that could make this a really incredible game. And in that regard specifically, I do think it has a big leg up on a lot of other platformers and even some RPGs. But with the underwhelming story and the lackluster dialogue, as well as the unbalanced character and enemy portfolios, I'm definitely going to say that it might not be that satisfying of an experience for the average player. But now that it's on sale, it could be worth a playthrough if you're already invested in those style of games. Well, that about wraps up the review of UnEpic on the Nintendo Switch. So if you found the review helpful or interesting, feel free to leave me a comment or a like to show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. These videos are coming out all the time, so there's always going to be some new indie to find. And if you think you might want to support this channel, feel free to check out our Patreon page. But anyway, this has been Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.